Hey everybody, welcome. It's John Ray with Musing Wizard, and I am joined today with a new friend of mine, Carl Brockman, who is a wizard in and of himself, doing coaching and helping people across the world. He and I share a lot of sales background stories I'm sure that we can get into. And one of the things that really struck me about Carl was how inquisitive his mind is and how good he is at listening to someone and articulating back to them what they said in a way that just expands the conversation. So Carl and I are going to be doing a lot more conversations like this, and I want you to leave in the comments what your favorite parts are so that we can know which way to steer these in the future. But Carl, thanks for being here, and yeah, I'm looking forward to our chat today.
Thank you, John, and thanks for the lovely introduction. You've put me up on a pedestal. I like to under promise and over deliver. So now I feel like I have to deliver in line with the expectations
Oh,
set.
we're putting you way up there and then dragging you down, sir.
Oh, perfect. No worries. Let's go. But no, very excited to be here, John, and thank you so much for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed the few chats that we've been able to have so far, and I feel as though every time we speak, I'm able to draw so much wisdom, but also practicality in terms of next steps for me. I see you as someone that I look up to, someone that's further along the path that I am. And to use a Matrix reference, I think one of the beautiful things about the world is that we get to both be Neo and Morpheus. I get to be Neo, you're my Morpheus, you're giving me the pill. I'm learning from a teacher while I'm also being able to help other people who I play the Morpheus role. So excited to be here, man, and thanks for the opportunity again.
Yeah, well, that's a great place to start because I think a lot of times there's an intimidation that happens when you start getting into coaching or when people start to come to you for advice where I know in the past that I had some deep worthiness issues where I would give somebody advice, and even if it was a recorded call, I would listen back to it, and could recognize that it was good advice, but then I would feel embarrassed that I gave somebody the advice because I didn't feel up to speed with the advice that I was giving. Maybe it's because I wasn't following the advice myself, or maybe it's just because I felt like a poser because of that. But one thing that I really want to unpack on these wizard chats, not only with you, but with everybody that I've been chatting with, is just like how we move through some of that ickiness, because we really are all both student and master. For anybody that's further behind on the path, we are the master. We're where they're trying to get, and we can be so wildly beneficial to them on their journey by giving them a hand up to where we're currently at. And yet at the same time, there's always another mountain, there's always another peak, and so we have to humble ourselves enough to be able to recognize that we're never going to get there, it's never going to get done, and that's why it's so important to just figure out how to be present. Because if you're not doing what you want to do right now, and if you're not just in it and aligned right now, there's no point, because you're never going to actually get there. And so I guess today I really just wanted to maybe understand in your own journey what that's looked like, and we can chat about kind of where do you go from some of those feelings that maybe feel like they're holding you down.
Yeah, I really resonate with that worthiness, I guess, concept and the self-talk that perpetuates from perhaps that feeling of lack. And I guess in my own experience, I've definitely felt like that. I felt like a charlatan. I've been a business coach and a men's coach for over a year now. The lights are still on, food's still on the table. And yet it's only been recently that I've been able to say, when someone asks what I do, I am a business coach. And that could be for a couple of reasons, my own worthiness, opportunity, and as well as I think you and so many people, I'm sure, listening, you see the charlatans in the world. You see people propping themselves up, their talk, but perhaps not action. And that alignment or that curiosity with yourself allows you to, I guess, be unsure and potentially go down those negative stories that you tell yourself rather than see the opportunity to improve. Life's a mirror. I've found so often that I will give some amazing advice in a coaching session or lead a client down a pathway of thought that I'm like, oh man, I needed that. I needed that so badly. And I guess blessed to be in that position. we it's easy to be objective when it's not you, and then to be able to glean those lessons onto your own subjectivity, I've found very valuable.
Yeah.
And sorry.
I was just going to say, I wanted to drill into that a little bit because I think it's important because why is that? Like, we can look at somebody else and we can clearly articulate what the problem is, what the solution is, what the hero's journey and narrative arc should look like for all these people outside of us. But then when we look at ourselves, like, it's just fogginess and muddiness. And I've certainly experienced that. I think everybody experienced that. And I think ultimately what it comes down to is we have a different vibrational alignment on every single subject and in every single perspective that we take. And so when I'm looking at someone that I have zero emotional attachment to, or no emotional history with, it's really easy for me to see that without all of the baggage. And because of that, I have crystal clear perspective. And this is why having a coach is important, because they basically can look at you from a perspective that you may not be able to see in yourself. However, when we look at the subject matter in our own life, whether that be our finances, our relationships, our love life, there's we've been with ourselves our entire lives. And so there's all kinds of emotional baggage that's connected to all of those things. And if we have a lot of upset or trauma, or even if we had like massive ascension experiences but then crashed from those, and so now we're trying to get back to a high that we can't quite figure out. And so there's a deeper level of frustration in knowing that I was there once. How did I get there? And so much of life is kind of reverse engineering those moments where we really were in it, and then figuring out, how do I maintain that? It's almost like their life sometimes seeds us with opportunities to experience flying high, so that we can start to catch the flavor or the muscle memory of it a little bit. And then life very quickly says, but you're not ready for it. You're too heavy right now. You got too much weight on your nervous system to stay up here. So now that you know how to feel for it, you have to close the vibrational rift.
Yeah. That Jim Carrey quote comes to mind, right? Like, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. The
Yeah.
dragons present themselves to give you the opportunity to slay them. And like you said, it discover a new peak, continue moving forward. As we get closer to our ideal, it gets further away.
Yeah, and
And
I was just thinking that that's the piece of advice that people who are down in the trenches least want to hear,
yeah,
that it's working out for you, and that this is for you. But of course it is true. And so as coaches, it's like, how do we find the language to help somebody who's really having a tough time actually understand that and be able to grasp onto it and hold it? And some of it is just like muscle memory, going to the gym. Like, it's gonna be painful and you kind of have to power through the first few weeks. But once you've had an experience where you recognize, oh, every time I show up, it compounds on itself. I'm getting compounding interest on my action when I go to the gym. Well, all actions are like that. And so when you're digging yourself out of a depression, or maybe a better way if you're digging yourself out, it's going to take a long time. If you're allowing yourself to slowly rise out of it effortlessly, that's probably an easier way to think about it. But the last thing that you want to do when you're in those doldrums of your emotions is to try to do something that would pull you out, like mapping your wins, or actually focusing on the times that things did go right. There's so many small techniques and journaling exercises that can lull us out of those base level emotions and transmute them back into creative potential. But it comes with a temporary season of discomfort. And that's what almost all of us are trying to avoid by projecting those feelings forward as actions, as covering them up with substances, as eating, or even getting addicted to things like exercise. There's two ways to exercise. One is I'm in alignment, and two is I'm so afraid of what will happen if I don't exercise that I'm forcing myself to do it, even though the energetic flow isn't there. And I think that, when it comes to um, really figuring out what does slaying the dragon actually mean for me, a lot of times we we want to project the dragon externally. So we want to build an enemy, or we want to build a boogeyman, or we want to say the Illuminati did it, and we want to blame our not thriving on anything other than what it actually is, which is our own emotional baggage. And if we can get very still and just sit with that, that will naturally start to play itself out. Life will naturally process that out of us. And then we can have this accelerated experience of rising into higher register emotions, which of course is where all the good ideas live.
Yeah, it links so perfectly. At the start of this chat, we spoke about, well, it's interesting as a coach, we can sometimes give the exact insight or the exact feedback because we have that objective view. It's not our own subjective reality. You see that in the political climate, you see it in all of the social media spaces. It is so easy to point out all of the flaws with the world and have some ideological opinion of how it should be fixed, but yet you're living in depression. You hate the people around you. You hate your circumstances. You're not willing to even take any steps for yourself because, well, what's the point? There's problems everywhere. It's so easy to be that cynic in today's society, and cynicism comes from awareness. We were first naive, we then become cynical, and then some of us are lucky enough to start thinking about, okay, well, how can I start cleaning up my own bedroom, as a metaphor and literally?
Yeah.
How can we start taking steps? So I, like my own life, I have respect for myself. It is so easy to project the problems onto the world and then just, oh, there's no point. There's problems anywhere. And you've already mentioned some, I guess, strategies at a high level as to how, but I'd love to take a step back if you'll allow me, John. And in our last chat, you mentioned, I think you used the phrase, how do we personally fly? I think this link's beautiful. How do we rise up out of the hole rather than dig our way out of it? And today, like you see so many of us that are just running on that hamster wheel, just chasing the dragon as the drug addict does, and trying to get that feeling again, and just running. Or the alternative is not moving at all, is being an absolute victim to their own circumstances, escaping through vices, choosing ignorance through cynicism. And I firstly would love to ask you, John, what is flying to you personally, and how do you fly?
Yeah. What a powerful question for anybody to ask, because really, before you can have anything, you have to be able to see it, right? And so if you want to fly, you have to be able to define what that actually looks like. And I think for me, it's right time, right place, right people, confirmation, seeing signals of things, having big goals, and feeling and seeing myself making progress towards those. We think we want that end carrot, but actually what we're really aiming for is the progress towards it. It's why when we get the carrot, usually it's not as satisfying as we thought, because the fun part was the adventure leading to it. And then as soon as we get it, we're craving new adventure. We're craving more expansion. And so for me, flying high is that expansive process. It is an expansion of awareness, seeing more data points, having a vivid clarity of thought, being in more flow, being able to help more people, and just recognizing how much infinite power I have available to wield, and wielding it flawlessly.
Infinite power, being available to wield, and wielding it flawlessly. I listen to that, and a part of me is like, well, yeah, let's take over the world. Let's abuse our position and continue to raise up and rise up, and really just project my own infinite power at the cost of whoever is around us. So you mentioned alignment earlier. How does alignment sort of fall into that relationship with infinite power?
Yeah, well, it's a fine line, right? Because in order to have infinite power, you do have to be a selfish person, but you have to be it in a kind of altruistic way where your own selfishness is a container that allows you to have enough self-care to fill your own cup. And then once your cup is overflowing, you're so much more capable of helping way more people. And I think a lot of times what happens is that people out of a sense of duty or obligation or guilt are operating in the world with an empty cup, and then they become resentful of the very people that they're trying to help because they didn't properly fuel themselves. And so yeah, in a matrix driven world, it's very easy to have your ego take over, right? And to overclock in the direction of infinite overlord. And that's where concepts like Illuminati and power structures and corporate oligarchies, like all of these things that people put out in front of them as the boogeyman, are really people that are grappling with their own ego, are grappling with their own sense of what would I do with that much power? Because when you get it, you recognize it's so easy to wield it in the wrong way. However, there's a kind of sensitivity to energy and to the subtleties of energy that I think as we expand in consciousness and awareness, we start to pick up on. And it's empathy, right? Like when I look at a lot of people that get labeled as megalomaniacs, they're lacking empathy, and because of that, I recognize that their decision making has to be very calculated. They have to be operating from a very intellectual plane, and it's only when you can get into those levels of empathy and more subtle energy discernment that you recognize that the bigger game to be played is not one of scarcity. We don't live in a world of finite resources. If you believe that, then you're still tapped into a narrative that this is a physical, tangible, touchable place, when really this is an energetic simulation that we're all rendering in some ways in our own little bubbles. And then from time to time we have these Venn diagram overlaps with other people that have their own movies or simulations going. And so the interesting paradox is that the more that we focus on our own self-care and feeling every feeling, and by feeling every feeling, what we do is we unpack the antennas that are sensitive to the subtle energy, and then we're actually able to recognize how we can expand our entire world with us, where we're growing the entire pie rather than seeing the pie as finite and oh, I have to steal everybody else's piece. And I think that there's a generation of humans that are coming online right now, the younger kids that are just more tapped into this idea that there's more power in inclusivity than there is in exclusivity. And sometimes there's a confusion on how to properly wield inclusivity, because it gets wielded in a scarcity mindset. But when you actually look at inclusivity as true abundance, as infinite resources, then you recognize that the most optimal EV positive way to wield your power is to do what's right for me, what's right for my family, what's right for my community, what's right for my nation, what's right for my world, and what's right for my galaxy and all other spiritual realms. And as you grow in conscious awareness, you just naturally make decisions through the lens of all of that, instead of when you're in survival mode, it's all about, I got to kill everybody around me, otherwise they're going to kill me. And those zero-sum games, while fun when you're choosing into them, I love a good game of poker. I love working in crypto, which is, probably like the more expanded version of poker. But I'm choosing into that game. I'm not getting blindsided by getting caught in drama cycles or energetic pendulums that are pigeonholing me in some kind of a karmic battle. And really feeling your feelings, getting silent with yourself, and allowing whatever discomfort is there to play itself out is how you start to recognize that infinite source of energy and tap into the flow of ideas that serve and are all encompassing of everyone that you're perceiving, not just yourself. Are you tracking with that? Does that make sense?
No, it does. It does. And the thing that jumped out at me just then is this the surviving the thriving mentality, Like I think about our own evolution as a species, humans, and before we invented agriculture, we were always worried about where our next meal came from. So to think far into the future just wasn't possible. Suddenly we're able to harvest crops and harvest ongoing food for lengths of time, and then we can think further into the future. We can develop plumbing, and we can develop communities and cities, and all of these things just stemming from the fact that we are going to be fed for not for longer than the day ahead of us. And individually, that surviving mentality stops us from thinking ahead, stops us from widening our horizon and our having a breadth, well, seeing the breadth of opportunity that's right in front of us. And for those people, it again, easy to focus on the problems of the world, but that need to focus on oneself just doesn't seem, well, they feel like they are, right? Like, I am focusing on myself. I'm rocking up to Woolies tomorrow. I'm going to my job and working 12 hours, and thank God I get a beer and get to slap the pokies at the end of the day. And I just don't have space to consider a perhaps a better way of living. And something you said earlier in the chat, the ability to define the vision, or define this ideal, this place in which it's worth working towards and striving to go. I think you can start intellectually there. And I believe I did that. I started intellectually there. I got to reflect on the things that I had available to me growing up and the things that weren't quite right, and reflect on those role models and those influences in my life, and started to map together the type of person that I wanted to become through the things or that I wanted to have or do or contribute to or be a part of. And I guess like that, I feel blessed to have that opportunity. I feel very lucky to have that opportunity. I know that I'm privileged, but everything's relative. You know, I'm sure there's someone who has it better than me that's doing way worse, and I'm sure there's someone that had it way worse than me that's doing way better. And it's truly up to ourselves to save ourselves, right? But I wanted to dive into this concept of purpose or meaning, or the vehicle that pulls us forward. And you've mentioned that being with ourselves and feeling, getting past just the intellectual game that we can play, and finding that alignment could be a big part of identifying one's purpose. But what is purpose to you, John? Is that something that you feel like we all inherently have from a unique perspective? Is it something that we create? Tell me a little bit more about your perspective.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I would say that purpose is just presence. If I can be totally content in what's happening in the moment, then I'm on purpose. You know, purpose is a booby trap that people get caught in for decades, thinking that they need something external to sink their teeth into, or they're not going to be able to feel that the way that they want to feel. And that's getting the cart before the horse. Like, you need to feel the way that you want to feel, and then you'll naturally be drawn into and called into situations where you can be of service. And really, the most optimal point of presence for me is when I'm being called into service and it's hyper aligned with what my interests are in that moment. And so not only do I get to do the thing that I love to do, but it's beneficial to so many people. And so that's kind of that sweet spot of someone calling for something, like asking for something, and then you being able to be gifted as the deliverer. And you know, you talked about this kind of transition from hunter-gatherer into agriculture, and kind of how that, you know, created a different level of abundance about food and how we utilize time, and that's really the techno-optimist viewpoint of the world. And I would definitely consider myself a techno-optimist. This idea that if there's any problem, don't worry, we will invent our way out of it. We always have, and we always will. And so what does it look like to collapse time? Well, we're seeing it with artificial intelligence right now. Like, we're all going to be able to, you know, do the equivalent of 5 jobs in the 90s, you know, in the same period of time, with way less grief and way more efficiency. And so that's a version of collapsing time. And that's the techno-optimist viewpoint, is that technology is always going to open up more territory for humanity. But I would consider myself a spiritual optimist, because a lot of times technologists get caught in a trap of, I have to invent it. I have to invent this technology. And of course, that's a game that if you feel really interested in, if that is the thing that more than anything you want to spend your time and attention on, you can be called to deliver that invention. But one of the things that I contemplate philosophically is, how often is it that coincidence just happened that the technology that I needed to open up the space that I was looking for just happened to be invented within the time frame that I was either born or living now, or within the year that I was asking for something. And how much of it is that every day when I wake up, I'm inventing a reality and downloading an entire back history that may or may not have actually happened. And so when I need a piece of technology, if I just align with the fact that reality can render it for me, then I invent an inventor that I didn't know about before today, who has a whole backstory in this reality where he's been trying to invent this thing for 40 years, and it just happens that he invented it today, the day that I need it. And so that's just a thought experiment. We don't know if that's true. We don't actually have an understanding of how much of this reality is real versus us just having a simulated experience of these downloaded memories that make it feel like we have a progression. But what I've experienced as I move into more spiritual wizardry and really looking at how to re-render reality in my favor and in the favor of those who I'm creating on this adventure with me, it really is a softening to any hesitation, a softening to any resistance, a softening to any scarcity that might prevent me from thinking that something is possible. And you do that by being present. And when you can get really present, that means that you have to actually be aware of what's happening in your body and in your world. In reality transurfing, the saying goes, I see myself, I see my reality. That's what being present is. And then I would add to that, and then in that moment, you have to feel whatever sensation comes up, because that is the simulation saying, okay, if you're interested in calling in all of these dreams and visions that you have and having them render in perfect timing for you, then what we're putting on your nervous system right now is what needs to be felt through, transmuted, and released. And that's the alchemy work. And so purpose for me is feeling every feeling and being hyper present with what's happening in my life, and not living too much in the past or the future, and just recognizing that in every moment I will be called or not called, but it's never in doubt that I'm not right where I need to be.
I'm on purpose.
Right.
Presence is on purpose. I thought that was very powerful. And you obviously were able to share a lot of different concepts that could perhaps be considered woo-woo or a bit far into the philosophical or spiritual sphere, which I can't wait to unpack with you as we continue these chats. I'm really excited. But to stay on purpose here, how does this link to the opportunities you see in the world? We alluded to some people that are on the hamster wheel and perhaps quite fueled with anxiety about the future, about their family being able to pay for a holiday coming up, that new car that they've just put on lease. And you also have the probably big audience of people that just cannot get up, cannot make a change, are escaping through drugs and vices, and just are at the complete whim of the situation that they've found themselves in. How do you see that opportunity in the world, and how is that manifested? How are there so many of us that seem to be stuck or just spinning their tires?
Yeah, well, it's just a feedback loop. So whatever you are is what you are. And so the more that you stay in a state, the more comfortable that state becomes. And so then that becomes your home base, and you return to your home base. And if reality is a mirror or a feedback loop, and whatever we're currently living is basically projecting out as the future that we then live as the present, then there has to be a moment in time where we do something differently. If we don't like what we're living, then some change has to happen. And so the question is, what should that change be? And almost always people try to white knuckle themselves through their depression or through their low feelings. And the opportunity is actually not to go into action. It's to sit and be with that and allow yourself to have that grief and that sadness and recognize that it's okay to be in that. There's, I think, a misconception in like the positive thought movement that you just have to start thinking positive thoughts and you think your way out of it. And that's a really difficult way to get out of it. And you end up in a kind of bipolar state where you're ping ponging between these two extremes. And the way to get out of that bipolarity and more wholly into a truly powerful place of presence where you actually feel positive, you're not faking it until you make it, is by first allowing yourself to be where you are. And too often, it's so uncomfortable to be where I am because we feel so unworthy. We feel like we fucked up. We feel like the thing that we were supposed to do has already passed us by and we missed our opportunity and we're never going to be able to catch up. I should have done this. I should have done this. I shouldn't have broken up with that person. And because of this, we just constantly beat ourselves up. Well, that's all just unprocessed trauma that we need to allow to come to the surface and transmute at the energy level. We can go to therapy and we can try to do it intellectually through talking it out or journaling it out, but it's so much more effective to move it from the mental plane into the quantum body and to process it in the nervous system. And as simple as it sounds, that just requires that you go on the bull ride of what's happening in your body. And so to do that, you set a timer for 1 hour and you do not move. You sit as still as you can, quiet room, no interruptions, and you do not move until that timer goes off. It doesn't matter if you're having thoughts. It doesn't matter what comes up. You just don't do anything and you sit there. And if it's the first time that you've done it and you have a lot of trauma, it will be wildly uncomfortable. You will convince yourself of a million different reasons that you should get up and not do this right now. But you just keep sitting with the bull of what's happening in your nervous system. And if you do that every single day for 30 days, you will be a completely different human being.
I like the correlation in the micro and the macro. You know, we've spoken about the macro a lot in the adventure of life, the hero's journey, that call to adventure that you might have alluded to just then, that so many of us miss and then continue to perpetuate the story that, no, I missed it. I did my ACL and I'll never be a football player and now my life's over. You know, they miss this one chance that they have at leading a fulfilling, successful, adventurous, fun, exciting, joyful life. And for that reason, it's so easy to keep just playing that game, playing that story yeah, woe is me. It's just not my time. You know, you only have one of these fucking lives, part of my language. Just fucking one, you know, Jesus Christ. Anyway, sorry, I'll come back on track. But also the adventure, the bull ride of just sitting with yourself. You know, since we last spoke, I've been attempting, I haven't done a whole hour yet, but I have done some long sits. I used to sit 10, 20 minutes every morning. I've now doubled that. And yes, the every couple of minutes, you know, oh, well, if you get a head start on your day, you can get to the gym and get 2 workouts today. Or actually, I need to take some notes for this upcoming coaching session. Or no, I need to make sure I have these documents in order for this proposal that I'm getting ready. You know, that there are so many, a billion things that my mind will tell me, no, like you need to do this now, otherwise you'll forget it and miss the boat and everything will be disastrous. But
Right.
I have found in that discomfort and focusing on the feelings, you know, I've been able to reflect on my own opportunity to move past just intextualizing my experience and trying to get deep. You know, I'm an avid fan of philosophy. I love reading about Stoicism and even moving into the more religious context like Taoism, Christianity. Recently, a friend of mine got baptized and he's sent me things of the Bible to read and still to intextualize them, I think is valuable. But to feel through my feelings, that long sit in the morning, I might wake up anxious or excited or tired or flat or pumped up, and to just sit with that and then reflect on the feelings at the end. This overwhelming sense of just, okay, calm. I know what to do now. Like, I know what to do now. I know
Yeah.
what to do now. Has been a blessing in the short time that I've sat for longer, and I do thank you for that. But it is writing a book. It's the
Yeah.
micro adventure.
Well, and so often we don't realize that the action that we're taking is simply so that we don't have to feel that discomfort. And so we say, "Oh yeah, I got to get the 2 workouts in," not recognizing that a child grows in their mother's womb without any effort whatsoever. It's just an energetic gestation process. It's a bioenergetic process that just plays itself out. And all desires are seeds that we plant, and then we recognize that there's a healthy gestation process. And every time that we're trying to force something to happen, we're trying to force that gestation, that natural gestation process along, and maybe not necessarily doing the most optimal or aligned things for that gestation process that would actually bring forth that desire in the healthiest way possible. And so that's why a lot of times when we're hustling harder, we get a piece of what we wanted, but we often don't get the thing that we were actually striving for, which is the deep personal satisfaction. Maybe we get the financial carrot that we were after, or we get the physical human that we've been trying to, and then once we're actually in the relationship, we recognize, I projected onto this relationship something that it actually wasn't, because I was projecting my own discomfort and not feeling it. And so what you said about, I know what to do, like the right ideas coming to you, being in alignment, being inspired, that's why sitting with your feelings and feeling them as sensation in your body is EV positive. It's because we're not saying don't take action. You'll actually end up taking more action and doing it more joyfully without any reluctance once you're aligned. And then that action will yield way better results. And it's basically the difference between, you know, having no experience trying to grow corn and throwing seeds in the ground and then coming out the next day and stomping on the ground, why haven't these grown, versus like having really well fertilized soil that has been tilled, you know, to the perfect amount, and then recognizing that there's a natural gestation process where those crops have to just grow, and letting it happen, recognizing that it's already done, that the crop or the fruit will yield, and getting to enjoy that process and being in a place of expectation. Like it's like if you were gonna buy a new house, but it hasn't been built yet. When you sign the contract with the builder for that new house, and all the finances are approved and in place, you know you're going to move into that house when it's done. There's no question in your mind, unless you're a worrywart, that it's not going to happen. And so the same is true with any desire. Like when we can vividly see it, it's like signing the contract on that house, and then we just have to let reality build it, just like that house has to be built, and not second guess it every single second. And when we are second guessing, that's just reality showing us that there's trauma that was stuck in our nervous system, that's mapped into our energetic field. And if we sit with that, it will transmute itself back into creative potential. And then the actions that we do take will be much more powerful.
Yeah, and suddenly faking it till I make it, or just hustling and hustling, doesn't seem as though it's the right way forward, because that hustle and that faking it till you're making it, as you said, yeah, might bring in bits of what we are truly after, but doesn't quite capture exactly what we're out to do it for. We find out that making a certain amount of money actually doesn't save us. Yeah, we might have alleviated some financial pressure, but though that pressure has been replaced with all of these other pressures that now we have to either ignorantly walk past or work through.
Right. But also I want to call out that there's a trap there, because a lot of people will take that mindset and then switch into like a spiritual mode where they just don't attract money because they've convinced themselves and those around them that it's not important to them. And that's not wizardry. You should be able to have whatever you want. And it's awesome to have money. Anybody that says that it isn't is lying. It is the most commonly denominated source of energy in our reality. And so having it is awesome. The key is not being attached to it, not making it mean something about you. And the paradox is that the less that you're focused on the money meaning something to you, the money making you feel a certain way, the more that you can end up attracting if you're open to the concept of money. A lot of people get into alignment, and as long as they don't look at the subject of money, and so then they become a yoga teacher, or a spiritual guru, or some kind of a coach, but they're constantly struggling financially, but they kind of just compartmentalize that out. And as long as they don't look at that, everything else, they have great relationships. They have a lot of fun. They have a lot of synchronicity in their life. Like they're the type of people who all kinds of interesting barter opportunities come up. But the second that it comes to actually making money, it totally throws them out of whack. And that's not holistic alignment. Like, you should literally be able to look at anything and find alignment, and the key, the reason that it's important to be able to define it and then sit with that definition is that as soon as you can visually see the thing that you want, reality is going to hit you in the nervous system with all of the energetics that are in the way of that. Because if you can see your desire and put a timeline on it and not feel uncomfortable about it, then you're in the gestation process. Just enjoy it. You're good to go. It's coming. But if you look at a desire and fill it in with holographic detail, and it starts to make you uncomfortable, ooh, I need to do something. I'm not doing anything. Well, the first thing that you need to do is get in alignment with your ability to sit and see that vision, because otherwise you're going to be acting out your karmic tendencies. You're going to be acting out your trauma and projecting it forward as bad behavior rather than taking optimal EV positive actions.
To see that vision, to see it without filling in different bits, like you said, as perhaps a hologram, or that could be deemed as a misalignment to your own being, consciousness, spirit. Is that as still as just simple as sitting with yourself? Are there other strategies or techniques? And am I intellectualizing again, to see what it is, or to see vividly the destination in which you want to set sail? Tell me more about that. How do you do that? What is that?
So when you clearly see, like, what's something you want?
I want to be a great father.
Cool. So give me some detail about it.
Sorry. Yeah. So I want to be emotionally available. I want to be available, time and emotionally. I want my partner to not have to work. She will, but I want her to not have to. I don't want money to be a thing that creates friction between our relationship and between our family. And by being available and being present and being on purpose, I want to be able to be that person that my children have the opportunity to not only learn from and to go to, but to know that they have that support, that rock, that place of home while they take their own hero's journeys and walk their own path. I want to be someone that is a role model and someone that doesn't have the abundance of pressures and roadblocks in the world that take me away from being not only a competent person and man, but also a father that's emotionally and physically available.
Yeah. So you're going to have that because you just articulated that beautifully. But let's just play out this process to see how it will go, and see if there's any cobwebs around that. So I'll return back to and explain the process after we do it. So you've got that great vision of being an emotionally available father. What, if any, problems could that create for you?
It could create a lack of money, if that trumps the ability to work and to look after my finances. That could create a monetary friction. It could mean that I place my purpose and identity on my children and stop living my own adventure. stop continuing to improve and to create the life and the journey that I want to live. Yeah, they're probably the biggest two things. It could limit my ability to provide and serve, and also take me away from my own path, because I now have an excuse and somewhere to place my value that isn't on myself.
Yeah, beautiful. And so how could you handle that?
By sitting with myself every day.
Sure.
How could I handle that? Well, I genuinely believe that I'm on the path to do that. You know, I have the utmost confidence that I will continue to learn and take advantage of the hard work and the journey that I've had up until this point. You know, I haven't been someone who's sat for an hour every day for the 30 years that I've lived. I haven't been someone who is spiritually aligned every day that I've lived. I have failed and failed hard. I've earned what I would call a good amount of money, and I've earned nothing. I've felt like an absolute failure. I've felt like that I've had times in my life where I didn't see a way forward and completely tormented myself and kept in the loop of those stories that didn't allow me to take any other steps in a direction. And I've felt times of complete inspiration, ready to go, fire in the belly, moving forward. And those ups and downs are something that does take me away from the present moment, or has taken me away from the present moment. And that continued alignment of self is, I guess, what put you in my path, you know,
Yeah.
what continues to allow me to attract and communicate and work with beings that just want to be better for themselves, for their businesses, for the people around them. And I believe and know that I'm on the path to not let those potential realities come to fruition.
Yeah. And so if you were able to optimally do that, what would be the consequences, good or bad, of that?
Sorry, optimally do what specifically?
Basically just handle those. You had mentioned that two of the primary things that jumped out at you as potential problems was lack of money and placing your purpose on your kids rather than continuing to evolve. And then you outlined a series of ways that you could kind of handle that. And so I'm curious, so does anything else come to mind with ways that you could handle that? Or do you feel like if you implemented the things that you just said, that there would be some kind of outcome, good or bad? And if so, what would that outcome look like?
Uh, Maybe there's a little bit of unconscious confidence here, and just struggling to articulate and share my own specific journey up to this day, and how that will continue to compound interest moving forward. My own work and curiosity, and to have a sidebar for a second, I truly believe curiosity is a superpower. It has led me to this exact point in my life, and I'm so grateful to be curious. Around those barriers, you know, money, when I've thought about money a lot of my life with a complete scarcity mentality. My parents worked so hard for money. Money was always a topic of conversation. As I left university and got jobs, I started making bits of money, but I still saw it as a fleeting resource, something that I had to hustle to just hold on to and keep hold, even though at times I would waste it. And my own curiosity has led me to think about money and learn about money and read books about money and talk to people about money, and start seeing it as energy, as you inferred earlier. Money is only a store of value, just like crypto is, just like gold is, just like a house is. These things are all a store of value. And as you also alluded to, there is an abundance of stores of value. There is more money on this planet than any of us are aware of, in my opinion. We are so ignorant to the vast array of resources, especially money, that exist. And that curiosity has led me to overcome those presuppositions, overcome those stories about money, in which had just been ingrained in me in a long time. And that's where the confidence comes from as I move forward. You know, it's only been really 5 years of conscious action, of more aligned action, of asking the big questions, of looking deeper and seeking alignment, trying to identify and do more of the things that light my fire, that lift me up, that give me energy, even though I'm expending it. And I believe that 5 years well, the compounding interest of the 5 years is crazy. And obviously bits of that before that. So to continue to ensure these things compound, to continue that compounding interest, I know will alleviate those two things that I'm worried about. And again, in terms of things that have just put me in such a great state over the last few years, 4 habits come to mind immediately. If anyone wants to start small and not sit for an hour, 10 to 20 minutes of meditation, at least 10 pages of reading, at least 1 page of journaling. Starting with fears is really great. You know, fear is the thing that keeps us all in our box, and to look at your fears objectively and to laugh at them sometimes. And like, why was I worried about that? Can be really powerful. And movement, you know, we are our body. This is the vehicle that carries us on this adventure. And for it to be placid and soft and painful just cannot be an abundant experience, no matter how aligned physically, mentally, spiritually, intellectually you are. So I think I got off track a little bit there, John, but I hope I've given you enough to answer what you're looking for.
Yeah, so let me unpack kind of the way that process works and how we could continue to run it if we were in a session or if you were doing it in journaling. So, you know, what happens with our dreams and our desires is that we have a lot of wild energy around them, like they haven't been maybe fully defined, or the dream part has been defined, but all of the underlying fears, worries, and unconscious energies haven't been defined. And so the process that we go through is get the vision of you having your dream. And so you perfectly articulated that. And then when we asked what problem could that solve, you immediately had 2 fears that came up, and you perfectly articulated them, which means that you're probably already up to speed with them, because you didn't even have to search for them. But those are the things so that was you starting to unpack some of the underlying energy that's in the way of you wholly being able to hold that vision. So sitting with that, you know, maybe I won't have enough money if I have to grow my family like this, or maybe I'm not going to live my own purpose and project it onto my kids. So those are 2 completely valid concerns, and we would just want to keep going through that process to see how vivid do those feel. Does that map in your nervous system? Are there any other concerns or problems that could come from you having this experience as an emotionally sound father? And what we're looking for is somebody to get really succinct in their answers, because that means that all of the stagnant energy around it has kind of ordered itself properly. So you did it perfectly. This is what everybody does the first time that they go through this process is sometimes they'll go off on a tangent. You're also kind of hosting a podcast, so it wasn't a true representation of how it might have normally gone, because you're trying to be entertaining as well. And you're doing a good job of that too. But there was some flailing for language, right? Because basically what you're doing is you're working out some unconscious energy around that desire. So we would maybe run through the same series of questions 5, 6, 10 times, to the point where you clearly know what it looks like to be an emotionally sound father. Those problems don't seem relevant to you anymore. The consequences or outcomes of having that are you just articulating the vision even bigger and giving it even more detail. And then we would close the process by reflecting on times in the past that you've felt similar, because what we want to do is we want to anchor in the neuroplasticity to something that already exists, so that those grooves can get bigger around that. And this is essentially what we can do to call in any desire, because every desire is a stick of polarity. It has a positive charge and a negative charge. And we want to get to a balance point between those two, where you're not leaning too far in either direction, so that you can wield it the way that you want to wield it. It's not wielding you. If you're too far in either polarity, it ends up controlling you through your unconscious actions. And so anytime that there's an underlying fear, yeah, I want this, but that's split energy. And so we always, the reason that we sit with ourselves is because that split energy is just going to come to the surface. It's going to manifest itself as temporary discomfort. But if we can sit and just have a noticing practice, literally just being curious about what that sensation in our body is. Oh, that's interesting. I've never even felt discomfort there before. Oh, I can't believe how speedy and manic I feel. I can't believe how much I want to get out of this chair. Just noticing that will slowly transmute that energy. It's like it's spinning itself out because as you're moving into higher frequency thought, it can't exist anymore. So it's spinning itself out, and it literally feels, that's what the Tasmanian devil is, that it literally feels like that inside of you. And then on the other side of that is a balance point where you are at cause over your reality instead of reality being at cause over you. And that's the PowerPoint that we want to get to, where we can see our desire vividly without having anything from the past saying that we can't have it, and without putting any attachment into the future, knowing that we could have it or not have it, and it doesn't really matter, but also it's mine.
Yeah, yeah. Very well said and articulated. And I think it lends just to the fact that we need to invest in ourselves, and am so blessed to have invested in some really amazing coaches over the last few years, and to invest in a coach is one way to invest in yourself, to give you just time daily. Give yourself time daily. Bookend your days with a little bit of time for yourself. Start writing, start getting some of these things that just go in circles in your head out into some other place of being, so you can look at them objectively. You can close the loop. One of my friends said this to me, and it's just stuck with me for years. He said that there's no such thing as a whole thought, and I thought that was so interesting. And what I love about writing, and more love about conversation, is that we get to add to each other. I get to add to a thought and then put a bow in it and complete it. In this conversation, I'm able to share what comes to mind in the moment, and you add to that, which compounds my own thought and closes the loop. And if you don't have a function like that in your life, I genuinely believe that is such a good place to start. How do you manifest these things outside of your own thought, and how do you invest in yourself? And we don't all have tons of money right now. We're not all taking over the world right now, but we can give ourselves time. And if you are living in a life that you aren't quite happy with, or you aren't very happy with, as you have mentioned a few times in this chat, John, the very first place that you need to start is feeling through that discomfort, investing in yourself by giving yourself time. And if you can't carve out that time, I don't believe it's important enough to you to change your circumstances. That's just my opinion. Any last thoughts on that, John? And to tie it into a bow on how can we all fly, any last nuggets of wisdom that you'd like to share?
Right. Well, I think what everybody's reaching for, like that feeling of flying, is like abundance. There's enough for me. I'm enough. Like I can be of service in the right ways. And abundance is really just knowing what you need to know when you need to know it. And so that's so simple. Like it's hard to be like, well, I don't know how I'm going to make the $1 million. I don't have anything right now. But it's very easy to be like, well, I could probably know what I need to know right now. I could probably figure out what the breadcrumb path is and go one step at a time. And so we can get to a place where we know what we need to know when we need to know it, if we're willing to do that work of just sitting with ourselves and letting the discomfort transmute itself into creative potential. And then that creative potential acts as a satellite dish that calls forth information that serves us. It lights up that breadcrumb path to exactly where we want to be. But we have to be able to define it. We have to be able to map, why don't I feel like I can have this? What problems is it gonna cause? Then we can start to map out what some potential solutions to that could be. And then if we implemented those solutions, what would the outcome be? And if we can continue to go through that process as a journaling practice, or even as a mental practice as we're sitting with ourselves, because sometimes just being silent for that long just isn't feasible at first. And so we need to have some kind of a mental process. If you go through that, you will start to get to the point where little by little, you know what you need to know when you need to know it. and that's abundance. And abundance isn't going to necessarily look like, oh, I won the lottery today. It's going to look like the person next door to you who's a pastor and you're not a Christian says, hey, can you come and help us at this event that we have? We're short staffed. And so that's reality giving you an opportunity to be of service. And reality is a mirror, right? So if you want to receive from reality, what do you need to be doing? You need to be giving to the mirror, because then the mirror reflects that giving back as receiving for you. And so finding ways to be of service, and as you sit with yourself, maybe that's part of your mantra, is how can I be of service today, will net energetic benefits all around you. I used to have a coach that said, if you make something, if you tickle something here, it'll giggle over here. These things don't have to be connected at a physical level. There's an energetic to it, and you just have to show up and be of service. You'll feel so much better about yourself when you're being of service. That will create a kind of alignment. It will make it easier for you to sit with yourself on a regular basis, and then life will just start to naturally move in your direction. But if you're the type of person who isn't going to do that and you want to do it, you should hire a coach, because a coach is going to do that exact same process with you, except they're going to make sure you do it. and we all need accountability in something. And so that's why you hire a coach. And there's plenty of good coaches out there. If you're looking for a recommendation, you could go to musingwizard.com, not to shill anything, but you know, you and I are both working with coaches and very interested in growing in that way, because it's an accelerated way to grow. And so if you can't hold space for yourself, you have to find a way for somebody else to hold that space for you, so that you can catch the vibe of it, so that you can get the muscle memory of it. And then eventually you can do it on your own if you want to, or you might find that it's really fun to do it in community. And that's the beauty of being in a men's group, or in group therapy, or just having like a really good group of friends that you know you can be vulnerable with. These are all outcomes that are on the other side of you just being willing to be vulnerable with yourself. And that starts by being curious about the sensations that are happening in your body, and everything flows from that.
To fly is to be present. To be present is to be on purpose. The path of the hero is one not for them, but for the mission that they serve and the people they protect. And it's funny, on the path of the unknown, although scary, when you take a step, funnily enough, the next step always shows itself.
That's right.
And so many other nuggets that some landed, some didn't quite grasp, some went over my head. I can't wait to listen to this back, and I can't wait for our next chat. But I think that's a beautiful place for us to wrap up today. John Ray, thank you so much for the chat today. Thanks for this opportunity. I can't wait. We've got some exciting topics to keep unpacking together over the next few weeks and into the future, man. But thank you for today.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, Carl, and thanks for everybody for tuning in. Let us know in the comments which parts resonated, which parts flew over your head, and that you want us to unpack more, and we'll try to design some conversations and content around that. But until the next one, we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Peace, guys.